Hey everyone, welcome. I decided to go outside today on my newly done deck.
Where's
Um,
where's the fox?
yeah, the fox would be over there by the rink, which is like that's where they usually sleep. The dog is right over my shoulder there. You see that? Panda's
Yep,
right
yep.
there.
I see it, yep.
But yeah, beautiful day, and then we have just these big giant tents out here, which we do for the kids. They each have their own little tent, which is like a social distancing thing we started during COVID for so they could have their friends over still and play. Anyway, so that's what we do. But anyway,
Good idea.
what's going on, Russ?
So let's talk about the Saudi golf tour. Somebody who was supposed to have principles in Phil Mickelson clearly was just trying to get more money out of them. So he has signed with them for $200 million. Now his argument, instead of this being blood money like it really is, his argument is, well, he's doing this for the betterment of the other players in the PGA so they could get paid more. If I've ever heard a bigger load of garbage out of a player, and none of these players, like this is not going to be that competitive of a tour. It's like it's basically not eight championships, not even championships. It's just 8 tournaments with some good players, and all time it's not going to count very good. And then for their trouble, they may all be suspended from the PGA Tour when they get back.
Yeah, but they don't care. They don't care because okay. First of all, Mickelson did an about face. He destroyed the Saudi government, saying that they were responsible for killing Khashoggi and all these other things, and then turns around and takes the money from the Saudis. I don't, I've been a Mickelson fan. I don't respect what he did, but the whole thing with the PGA here is this is like an NHL WHA type of thing where they're
trying. I think it's worse, but it's similar. Well,
they're trying to penalize these players and threaten them by saying they'll never play PGA Tour events again. And I think what they're saying is good because I don't
think so. I think
they're getting underpaid by the PGA, and this is a way of them getting paid. Now the thing is, people are misrepresenting this. The PGA does not cover the majors, so these players can play in the British Open, play in the Masters, play in the U.S. Open, and the only one is the PGA Championship that they won't be able to play. But you know what? If they can play the majors, that's all that anybody friggin' watches anyway. So who cares?
Well, we don't know that that's actually going to happen. Dustin Johnson, if he's underpaid at 125 million career earnings, let me be underpaid or anybody be underpaid like that, Mike.
Oh, sure.
And then the other thing is, it's like anything else. In 10 years, when they're sitting on their stack of money and none of these wins matter and none of this matters, and maybe they don't ever play in the PGA again, or maybe they only play in half the tournaments. Mm-hmm. It's going to affect how they were viewed in history, and that's something where it's easy to say today, "Hey, I got my 200 million."
Sorry,
it's easy to say I got my 200 million, but in the end process, I think the competitiveness and how they're viewed is going to affect them.
Oh, yeah. That's it. We're getting weird echoes. You guys good?
Kevin was logged on twice. I had to delete the clone Kevin Allen.
That's the second time.
That's because that was better than me not being logged on at all because I was busy and lost track of the time. So
I thought you did.
I'm glad some great showrunner messaged you.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Because my phone is.
He didn't see it.
I didn't see it. I just realized it was 20-1. So
there you go.
We're all good. Let's go. So we're going to start the show here.
Yes.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, June 8th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and the books behind me indicate I'm really smart.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I challenge
that. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm going with Russ on this.
I'm Mike Lind. And watch HockeyBuzzcast at HockeyBuzz.com.
No books.
This is the podcast. No, I'm just my yard and my new deck, which I'm showing off with my dog right over my shoulder, right there. Watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. Today, we're going to have a couple of fun things to do. We're we're gonna end the show because Russ may have to leave a little bit. So we're gonna end the show with a judge, Kevin Allen, as per request. We've got a lot of people want, and today's judge, Kevin Allen, will be Mike and I debating whether or not Jack Campbell deserves $5 million per year from the Leafs. That'll be the debate that we have today, and we'll get into that more in a little bit. We're also talking about tonight's game last night's game, of course, not tonight's game, last night's game. But we do have to start with this Pasternak story, Mike, that you wrote out there too. What's exactly going on? Because I have been working all morning and didn't see this yet.
Well, there was a piece that Fluto Shinzawa wrote in The Athletic yesterday, and laying the groundwork for what is going to be probably a pretty interesting story throughout the summer. Now, David Pasternak is reaching the final year of his 6-year contract. He was signed for $6.6 million, probably one of the best bang for the buck contracts next to Nathan McKinnon in the NHL. The turnover in Boston over the last few years, namely Torrey Krug and David Krejci, who were apparently best friends of Pasternak, and Krug was allowed to walk into free agency and sign with St. Louis. Krejci didn't have it made worth his while to re-sign with the Bruins and went to play in the Czech Republic, or Czechia, excuse me. So he sees this happening. He sees the potential of Patrice Bergeron retiring and McAvoy and Marchand and all the things that we talked about before, and now Bruce Cassidy being fired. And a source told Shinzawa that if Don Sweeney is the general manager, David Pasternak will not be signing with the Bruins. Now, anything can change. That I think that could be just
what is happening in Boston.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I think
the rebellion.
This is really literally the inmates taking over the asylum type situation going on here. What's happening?
I said this to Russ before the show. It's like, remember the ethic that has been sold regarding the Bruins for the last, I would say, 6-7 years at least. Everybody took less for this team to stay together and to win, to try to win Stanley Cups. And that happened with Bergeron. It happened with Pasternak. Marchand with $6.1 million. Kev, that all went down the drain. Now, a few years ago, they traded Milan Lucic when he wanted a big contract, but that went all down the drain when A, they let Krug walk, B, they let Krejci go back to the Czech Republic, and now when McAvoy signed at $9.5 million, I think everybody said, okay, they're paying people what they actually deserve. Now we all need to get what we deserve.
Well, yeah. What a mess, though. I mean, like what's going on there? Like this team, like on paper, as I wrote today, looks like it's still a contending team. Like they've had 5 consecutive, if you prorate the 56-game season, 100-point seasons. They were one of the better defensive teams this season, and it's not like they didn't anticipate that there was going to be a they're going to have to retool because Bergeron is going to be 37 next month. Brad Marchand is 34, but they knew it was coming, but they didn't think it was going to be this summer. And, the amazing part of Fluto's story was I didn't know that the Krejci thing was about money. Like I thought it was all about he just wanted to go home, and because that was the impression that they left. So behind the scenes, like he just wanted more money. I'm really kind of shocked at that. And also, it was reported a couple weeks ago that Pasternak was going to try to recruit Krejci to come back, particularly if Bergeron was. So now all of a sudden we're hearing what even goes beyond that. Well, the end result of all this is if Bergeron does not come back, and it sure seems like that's still a possibility, and Pasternak is serious about this, then we're going to expedite the retooling of this team. I don't think there's any question about that.
I mean, Russ, I was being hyperbolic yesterday when I said, they could be in the lottery for Connor Bedard. But if they lose Bergeron and then they trade Pasternak, they are. I mean, I think they're and all these guys are out until Christmas. They are in the
Well, like Kevin said, Christmas isn't a total death sentence for the team, and I think they probably can manage until then. So I don't know about that. I will say this for people that are wondering: the internal speakers on my computer are fried, so I'm having to use a portable. So if I sound different, that's the only way I'm getting the show up today, folks. But as far as the Bruins go, I think all of this is crazy because for years, Bruins fans complained about David Krejci to no end. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't living up to the contract. He wasn't this.
Yeah.
He wasn't that.
Right.
Now, David Krejci's coming back, and they can't pay him enough because it's like, hey, wait, we need David Krejci. And really, Don Sweeney is the one who is stuck on all of this. He has to go through with all this. He has to let the players sort of take over here. But if all this fails, Cam Neely's going to clear out Don Sweeney probably next year. Yeah, but this is their last-ditch effort here.
But the problem now, coming off this story, Russ, is if they fire Don Sweeney, then it looks like they fired Don Sweeney to cater to David Pasternak. I mean, that's not.
No, but they'll sign Pasternak, and then if this doesn't work out, they'll fire Sweeney, and Cam Neely won't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What happened to your deck, Ak?
Yeah, I'm out there, beautiful day. Suddenly the doors swing open and the people who cut the lawn just showed up. Sorry, I had no idea they'd be here today.
Yeah, well, then you'll end up like with me, with my wife driving, 15 feet behind me, and then you won't be able to hear. So
right, so I have to come back inside. But anyway, I think the past, this is like becoming a little bit like there was an old lady who swallowed the fly story to me. Like here, we hear that Cassidy's gone because they don't like him, and now they're trying to swallow up Sweeney because they don't like him. But Sweeney fired Cassidy, which they wanted him to do. So it's very, this is all hearsay. We don't know if any of this is true, but this is what's circling around there. I don't know that, this.
Well, but it's crazy, but how often does this happen too? And, like I get on that a little bit about conspiracy theories, but I find it always curious that, the Bruins have been a successful franchise, again, as I just spelled out, 5 consecutive 100-point seasons, contend. I mean, they were viewed as a contending team this season. Yeah. At the trade deadline, they were trying to make a move to strengthen their position. They were looking ahead. They got, a long-term solution in Hampus Lindholm. This is not a team that looked like it was going to tread water or they were going to go backwards. No. And Bruce Cassidy, I remember, 3 years ago, I tweeting out that, I wish there was during the conference final that I wish all coaches were like, Brendan Moore and Cassidy, just in terms of dealing with them. Like, he's a guy that we all look to as a guy that does a good job, is terrific with the media. Now, all of a sudden that he gets fired, now we hear, well, he wasn't real good with younger players. And
oh my gosh,
it was hard on him. Oh, well, I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Bill Meltzer, if you look at Bill Meltzer's recent article about the Flyers, he basically campaigns for Cassidy, saying, what a great guy he is and how he believes he's a great coach.
Well, just this morning already, you see everybody backpedaling on where teams are in terms of their search for a coach, because they've got to factor in that Cassidy is now available. And even though there was hints of this, right in the exit interviews, when I believe it was Neely or maybe it was Sweeney, but I thought it was Neely who said, that we don't have any problem with the quality of coaching we have, although maybe the style needs to be.
Yeah.
So like there was hints, because I think everyone went, whoa, and then it comes to pass. Like I never still believed that he was going to be fired. Like, how could you fire Bruce Cassidy? What's his sin? He lost a Game 7 to the Carolina Hurricanes.
With a team that was laden down with injuries throughout the year and in the playoffs. I mean, with a rookie goaltender, he got to.
Well, I guess that's my point. If you're looking at this from the outside looking in, who's at fault for what's the situation they're in now? Is it Sweeney or is it Cassidy? Because it sure feels like it might be Sweeney.
I think it's Don Sweeney.
I think it's Sweeney, and Fluto mentioned it in the piece that they've traded first round picks as every contending team does. They've traded first round picks to bring in rentals, but the development of their players, not only those 3 first round picks from 2015, but going past that, guys like Trent Frederick, guys like they've had young guys, Anders Bjork, who they have not really developed well Now it's up to them to come to the forefront, but teams can develop their players and bring those players that are cheap players into their lineup. And Boston, at a certain point, it stopped, and now the well is running dry.
I think that's part of the system. I don't think that's Cassidy, because I've never thought that Cassidy didn't want to play these guys.
Right.
I think Cassidy did ask for accountability, so it wasn't easy, like it wasn't like simple. But I thought young players could play. The 3-in-a-row draft, look, if they'd have picked the right three, we wouldn't even mention that draft ever again. Right. Because there was always going to be a question as to how good any of them were going to be, and DeBrusque was going to be the best, and how good is he? So as far as that, forget about that. Brandon Carlo, he developed because of Chara. I think the issue with the Bruins is when they get the right first-round guy and they come in soon, they don't need development. But I think the guys for long-term development, like the Donatos, the Borks, the Stanikas, and all those, that's failing in Boston badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of the draft, like, and I don't want to be cast as an anti-draft guy because, I'm not. In fact, I'm very intrigued. I've been called a draftnik before because I do pay attention to, who's available and everything. But I just had reason. I was working on a story about Dylan Larkin, and I wanted to know where he sat in terms of performance levels out of the first and second round of his year's draft. And I suspected he was going to be among the more productive players. Well, I had the years mixed up, so I started at 2014 and went and looked at all the productions. Now, that was 8 years ago, 2014. I started looking at 2014. I was absolutely stunned that how many people came out of that first round. Then I looked at 2015. It was even worse. Mm-hmm. Like, we talk about the draft as being important to building in a salary cap year, and it is. Like, you got to get depth out of that. But the actual percentages of guys that make it even out of the first round is just not significant. Like, it's really, I think it's got to be distressing to a general manager that they look around and, you're not guaranteed to get a player even in the second half of the first round. I mean, you hope you do.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
and Detroit was fortunate because they picked Larkin at 15th, and I think he used the fifth highest points in that particular in terms of point production.
Yeah, he's tied for sixth right now.
But he was picked at 15, and three of the people ahead of him were drafted in the top 10. So, the only
one. If you look at 2017 as an example, you only have one player that hasn't played in the NHL, and there's quite a few over 200 already, and a lot of them that played. So it does depend on the draft class, but you're talking on average, and on average,
that's exactly right. There are drafts where it is very good, but they don't come along all that often. So
no, that's true.
No, they really are super rare.
There's only two players in that draft when Larkin was taken 15th who have scored more that were picked after him. One was Pasternak, and the other was a third-round pick named Braden Point. Other than that, that was a pretty damn good.
If Point wasn't small, he would have been picked in the first round, but he was small.
Right.
He doesn't seem that small though.
He doesn't play.
No, but for teams back then, he was very skinny too.
Yeah,
the era of that. All right, so let's get into last night's game. It felt like it was interesting because when you look back at some of these Tampa shutouts that they've had, this wasn't a shutout, but it felt like a shutout. When you look back at when Tampa does this kind of thing, it's really fascinating to me how they tend to be outshot in those games, but when you look back on those games, they do a great job at controlling where the shots come from, a great job at controlling where the rebounds are. They just really they really are fantastic at clearing out and keeping the opportunities, the kind of shot that they know Vasilevsky's going to stop.
They were outshot, but I can count on one hand the number of really good scoring chances that bought.
Yeah.
Well, I'll sum it up by just saying this. Last night was the first game that I saw Tampa play in this playoffs where I thought they were completely in charge and they were like the Tampa Bay team we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
I don't know that they played a good game and when they beat Toronto.
Oh,
Yeah.
game 7. They
Well, I mean, but they just weren't the Lightning. They really weren't. They weren't anywhere near like the team they were before. And up until this time, even when they won the last game, I just kept feeling like they were going to blow it. Like they just didn't seem in charge. And in this game, I didn't. Once they got going, I thought, well, the Rangers aren't coming back in this one. So
the only thing I can add on to what Kevin said is they did control the game. The Rangers did control the offensive zone in the second period, but like you guys said, nothing was a great shot.
No.
At the end of the game, the Rangers were starting to figure out what Toronto had trouble with basically Tampa just keeping everything to the outside, not letting anything in the middle. They were starting to break that down.
Yeah.
So if Tampa can keep that up on the road, they're going to win this series. But that's the problem. They haven't been able to keep that up on the road. And so now that's going to be the next test for them.
Yeah. That's an exhausting style to play. I mean, that really is like the way they play that is I mean, it's almost they're almost playing man to man to a degree as well. So it's like they really are on top of you. Moving.
Like I said, I think that Tampa in Game 7 against Toronto played what they like they played. They played a complete shutdown game, which is this is a team that never did play shutdown hockey. Now because I don't think they're as gifted offensively as they were in previous years. They've learned that they have to do that, but they can't do it all the time. They spotted it against Toronto, they spotted it against Florida, but like down 2-1 in this series, they sort of had to play this way. And really now Kevin, it's going to be a war of attrition because now, Strome is out. They don't know if he's going to play Game 5. Hedl got hurt yesterday. Really, the physicality of Tampa is starting to take a toll on the Rangers.
Well, it's interesting. Tom Laylaw and I debated, and we usually find ourselves on opposite ends of debates. And so we have the ex-player and the guy that's covered the league completely having a different perspective about who the pressure is on. Like, who do you think that I think the pressure is on?
Rangers.
No, I think it's on Tampa.
It's on Tampa.
Yeah, I think it's on Tampa because they know, like, if they don't win in New York here, you got to win in New York.
Right.
And I think, you want to do this in Game 5 and then come back, home. And Tom completely disagrees. He thinks all the pressure's on the Rangers now. That he thinks that they're feeling it. They don't want to go back to Tampa where where Tampa feels better about itself. So like they feel like if you lose this game, then you're going to end up losing the series. But I don't. I think Tampa still got the pressure on it.
I think there's two different ways of looking at that. No, you go ahead, Russ. You go first.
I was going to say, I think Strome's going to be back next game because he skated very hard pre-skate, and they decided at the last minute because he was feeling some pain to leave him out.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's the question of there's two things that you kind of look at when you and Tom were talking about this. Like, to me, there's the pressure, right, Kev? There's the pressure. Pressure I define as who's feeling it more, like who could choke more, who could be like in a situation where they really just they know that they're up against it, and there's no room for error. That's pressure, right? But then there's the concept of who needs the game more is another slightly different question. When I look at this, I mean, I feel like you said, like Toronto, they maybe need. I mean, Tampa, they need this game because if they don't, they have to win one in New York to win the series. They also I felt like after sweeping the Panthers, Tampa suddenly became like a serious favorite again. Like that, they made a statement. They swept the President's Trophy winning team. So now I feel like they were the favorites against the Rangers, even though the Rangers have, even though the Rangers had a better record, Tampa's defending Stanley Cup champions. So as defending Stanley Cup champions, the pressure is on, and they've had two terrible games in New York, but at the same time, I feel like they got their game back. So I don't feel like the pressure is on Tampa necessarily here, but I do kind of agree with the pressures on the Rangers. I really do. I think that the Rangers need to win. If the Rangers don't win this game, they're not going to win the series. Like that, if Tampa doesn't win this game, they could still win the series, I think.
I'm not ready to say all that, but if the Rangers score the first goal at the Garden, you don't think there'll be pressure on Tampa?
Yeah.
Pressure, but this is not a team that's afraid to fall down 3-2 in a series. Like,
I think destroyed at the Garden one game too.
I think the pressure that's on the Rangers right now, Russ, is that they in 2 games in Tampa they scored 3 goals and they were all on the power play. 5-on-5, they have been not able to generate offense at all. Hedman is being his usual physical presence, and I think I said to you before the game yesterday, the Rangers need Trouba to do what he did in the first 2 rounds. They need him to ring the bell of somebody.
He was doing it.
Not dirty, but
he's trying. I mean, you also don't want to go shorthanded against this team, so it's tough.
Right.
Yeah.
He was doing it, but remember, with the exception of the goal 41 seconds to go, they were all power play goals for Tampa too.
Sure.
Like, this is the playoffs. This is what happens.
Right.
Well, and maybe there's, no team is feeling the pressure. I mean, this is a team that's won 2 Stanley Cups in succession. They've won 2 more series. They've got 10, they've won 10 series in a row. They know all about winning. They're, not timid or fearful about going into games. So maybe they're not feeling pressure. And there's a cockiness about this Ranger team that comes from having Shesterkin in the net and the belief in home. So maybe neither team is feeling.
I think that's an interesting point, and I think that you see that as you get later in the playoffs sometimes too, because we always talk about losing in the first round is such a big deal. There's so much pressure on not losing the first round. Second round, losing, and for some teams, okay, they've won the first round, but they never got past. Once you get to the conference finals, it's changed from pressure to just we really want to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. We're not afraid to lose anymore because we've won 2 series. So the pressure it shifts in your head to like, okay, we just want to win now. We want to get to the Stanley Cup Finals and keep playing. And I think the Rangers are maybe a little bit ahead of their time. Their window is opening at this point. The Rangers window is definitely opening, right?
I mean, everybody's thinking that, and that's why the pressure's not really there because it's Galant's first year. There weren't this expectation level wasn't this high. So they're not going to get killed by their owner or management or even their fan base for losing. So they don't really have that
money.
pressure.
They're playing with house money.
Players with house money. But put this into perspective. It just occurred to me now. Because of the weirdness of the COVID schedule and when we played Stanley Cup Finals, they've won 42 playoff games now in just a very compressed amount of time. This Lightning team has. Maybe they're just not feeling any pressure at all. Like maybe this is just what they do. They've kind of seen it all, and whatever this is, how many months has this been? 2.5.
Since think about it. It's really basically 2 years, kind of
right.
They've done this in because it was 2 summers ago that we were in the bubble.
Yeah, right. We talk about how hard it is to win 1 playoff game, and they've won 42 of them. In 2 years. So
this is within 2 calendar years they've played in. There have been 3 playoff rounds in the NHL. There have been 3 playoffs in the NHL within 2 calendar years.
And they've won 10 rounds.
They've won 10 rounds, and now they definitely got their swagger back. I felt after the 2 games at home. I mean, the crazy thing about it is how close they were to falling down 3-0 in the series.
It was just this close.
Right, which we've seen before with them too, though. Mm-hmm. And that and I go back and I always remember the Capitals, that Capital Blue Jackets series where the Blue Jackets were the year the Capitals won the Stanley Cup. The Blue Jackets were 1 goal away, like they were in an overtime of a game 3 with the ability to go up 3-0 in the series. The Capitals scored, made it a 2-1 series. Capitals won the series, won the Stanley Cup. It's just incredible what a fine line it is, And this feels the same way in so many ways. I don't think I think it's just a real strong desire to win. But I do feel that the Rangers need to win game 5 more than the Lightning do. I just think that I don't think the Lightning are going to be afraid of coming back. But I think if the Lightning win, the confidence on the Lightning.
I don't think the Lightning are afraid of anything, really.
If the Lightning win their 3 games in a row, their confidence is just ridiculous, right? And if
I mean, if we're saying that the Rangers are playing with house money, then oh my God, Tampa Bay for sure is. Like they got nothing to prove to anybody about anything.
Right.
So.
Which I think puts the inevitable pressure back on the Rangers more because, but not really. It's not really pressure. I guess pressure is the wrong thing. That's why I was trying to say who needs to win.
Yeah.
More. So let's, I wanted to talk about something else today because we got into, so over the weekend, I talked to a really good source about Jack Campbell and a couple other people with the Maple Leafs, a guy who I've been friends with forever, who was in Philly for a wedding, got to go out with him for lunch. And he gave me very different information than has been reported out there. We talked about it a little bit on our chat. Mike and Russ were hearing things in the combines, and I want to focus all this on Jack Campbell today, and because I feel like this is one of the most important and possibly dangerous decisions Maple Leafs have had in a long time. Like what they do with Jack Campbell here, I think is a serious decision. And my impression I got from talking to the person I was talking to was that they're going to get this done. That they he would like more years. They would like but they're going to get this done. They're going to go over $5 million for him, which is where they have to go probably for him and which honestly, in my opinion, I think they should go for him, because I think the options out there, if you don't bring him back, you got to sign somebody else
or trade for somebody
or trade for a goalie. And so we're gonna do a Judge Kevin Allen on this today, and I'm going to argue that Campbell should be, that they should sign him for more than $5 million. And Mike's going to argue against that they shouldn't go $5 million or more, and they should take their chances.
Let me because not that they shouldn't, that they can't.
That they can't. Okay, that they can't, and I say that they have no choice.
And that they've determined that he, based on his what he has done, he's played very well for them, but what he has done over a year and a half doesn't deserve a $5 million salary.
Right. So Russ, I'd like to get your 2 cents on this too, before you have to go and everything like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my 2 cents is I do think the Leafs have a limit, especially where they have no place to put Mrazek right now. If they are able to get a deal going before they sign Campbell to get rid of him, then I think they can go over 5. I think it's going to be hard to go over 5. I'm sure Campbell's camp will do it regardless, because they could go right over to Edmonton and get Edmonton to pay. So it's not like this is the only place in town that needs a goalie. Right. So in the end, Campbell's got really all the cards. The Leafs at this point are just trying to hold on to their goalie, because otherwise they're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't interpret it that way, but this is the thing. They like Jack Campbell. They think he did a fine job. Was he everything that they were looking for in a starting goaltender? No. We can talk about this in the point counterpoint here, but I think that
Mike, allow this to be this is your opening statement.
Okay, let's define what we're debating though. So we're only talking about whether or not they will give him $5 million, or they should. What's the statement here?
Yeah, let's see. So let's say will. Let's say will. Whether or not they will, because if Mike's saying they can, then they won't. So I'm going to say they will. Okay. With this will versus won't.
Right. And it'll be $5 million or more.
$5 million or more.
Right.
Term. And I'm not talking about years, but for next year he'll be making $5 million.
His AAV is $5 million or more.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll.
So
it's not whether he's worth $5 million or not. It's.
Well, I see that
plays into it, of course, because
that calculation is part of what would determine if Toronto would offer him that, because if they think you have to put it in this context. Cal Peterson was paid $5 million a year. Linus Ullmark was paid $5 million a year. Sorokin, I think, was $5.25. Merzlikins was $5.4. So in terms of extensions, that's the area where Campbell would go. Do I think he's better? Do I think he's better than Linus Ullmark or Cal Peterson? Yes. Do I think he's as good as Merzlikins or Sorokin? No. So he's sort of in the middle there. But because Toronto is a cap team, and that's a factor in this, I don't think they can spend $5 million, even if they find a way to jettison Mrazek's contract, either LTIR or trade or retained salary or buyout. I don't think they can, because they have too many fish to fry in terms of improving in other areas to address during the season, before the season.
Okay, so my counterpoint is they are one of the, I'm going to call them one of the top 5 teams in the NHL right now. And I really do believe that. I really believe they're one of the top 5 teams in the league right now. I think that what they showed against Tampa was remarkable. That series was intense. So if I was to list the top 5 teams in the NHL, we can debate this another time, but I would go Colorado at number 1, Tampa at number 2, Toronto at 3,
Oh my
the
God.
Rangers at 4, and the Panthers at 5. That's where I would put the to me, those are the top 5 teams. Now, we can debate that all you want.
Yeah, can I just quickly counterpoint that? I can't put a team in the top 5 that hasn't won a round in 6 years.
But where they are right now, I don't care what they did 5 years ago. I'm talking about where they are right now. They
lost a month ago, so they lost
a month ago to a team that could very easily win the Stanley Cup. So I'm not really, and has won the Stanley Cup for the last year. So that's why I'm putting them there. So for what it's worth, that's where they are. So when I look at them as a top 5 team, they need to be at least paying $5 million for their starting goalie. It's not doable. There's no other team in that world that wouldn't do that. There's no other team that would have that opportunity not to do that. So to me, you're going to have to, let me finish my point here. So my point is that they have to go at least $5 million. And if they're going to go out and make a trade for like John Gibson or something like that, which you talked to me about before, that he's $6.4 million.
Yeah,
so you're admitting there, Mike, when you say that to me yesterday, that you believe that they can pay more than $5 million for goalie.
Yeah, because he's a higher level. He's a higher level goaltender.
Right. So we're not. So you're saying Campbell is not a $5 million goalie for the Maple Leafs.
Correct. I don't think he's I don't think he's a $5 million goaltender, and B, I don't think the Leafs can pay him $5 million. Do I think he's? I mean,
Well, they can pay him if they can pay Gibson 6.4. They can pay him.
Right, but with Gibson, with Campbell, it's strictly there's no money out in a Campbell thing. He's being signed as a UFA or expiring contract. With a Gibson trade, there's probably salary going out. Where like if it's Nylander, it's probably money in, money out, the same amount. I don't know if that's the type of deal that Anaheim would want.
Okay.
But that's the scenario. But here's
I have a question to ask Mike.
You ask Mike, rest you, and then Kevin gets to run.
Right. Who's the better goalie, Mike? Right now, Freddie Anderson or Jack Campbell?
Are we talking? What are we talking here? Are we talking
right now? Who would you rather have as goalie for the Leafs
next year?
Well, since Freddie Anderson, I can't say
if he's available.
I can't say either.
Why can't you say it?
Because they're both failures, Russ. They both have lost with the same team in front of them.
All right.
That's why.
Okay, fine.
Are you kidding me?
There's not a rat.
No, I'm not kidding you.
You have a choice there, one or the other.
Okay, here's the thing that I look at, and Jack Campbell was named an All-Star this year. Okay, the first 2 months of the season, 13-4-1, 943 save percentage, 1.72 goals against. All were the best figures in the league. Okay, great. After that, 18-5-5, 896 save percentage, 3.23 goals against. He had 20 some odd games at the end of last season when he substituted for Anderson. And he played decently in the playoffs. He played decently this year in the playoffs. He wasn't a difference maker in either one. He was up against Price and Vasilevsky. So in those series, he was the worst of the two goaltenders. But that's not an attack on Campbell. Just Price is a Hall of Famer, and Vasilevsky probably is. But in the regular season, after those first 2 months, he was a below average goaltender. They don't know what he is, and he's 30 years old.
So what about the defense in front of them? They get off scot-free. It's all on Campbell.
Well, no, it's not all on Campbell. But if you're looking for a common denominator between the guy you just mentioned, Freddie Anderson, and Jack Campbell, Freddie Anderson's numbers before he got hurt were better than Campbell's, and then he slumped in the 2 months before he was out for the rest of the season. And look at what Anderson did with a better defense in front of him in Carolina. I mean. It's not an attack on Campbell to say that he may not be worth $5 million a year in the current market. Is he a good goaltender? Yes. Is he a number one goaltender or a goaltender that can carry a team to a Stanley Cup? I don't know.
My final point before going to Kevin. Kevin, go ahead.
Go ahead. You can say your point because I got
questions.
questions.
Before going to Kevin is they have found a goalie I believe that can play in that marketplace, which I think is important, and who has shown that he can do it in different situations. And has also shown a bend, not necessarily break goalie, which is what you need when you have an all-out offensive team is a bend, don't break goalie. That's what I think they have. So go ahead, Kevin, you go.
Yeah, I just have some questions. Do you have comparables? Like who do you compare Campbell to in the marketplace?
I do. So I went through. So I'm going to say Merzlikins is a good one. I think he's in that range. He's 5.4. I think Mike did the $5 million goalies pretty well. Like Saros and Leonard are both $5 million goalies. I think he's better than Robin Leonard, not as good as UC Saros.
I dispute that. I
So,
think Leonard is
but then when you look at other guys, when you look at free agents who've signed recently, you go to Philip Grubauer, $5.9 million in Seattle. Markstrom.
That was a contract.
Let me finish. Markstrom, $6 million. We know all those things. Markstrom, $6 million. Bennington, $6 million. So yes, to me, the comparables, and as far as where he stands statistically, he's definitely in the $5 million range because he's with his other goalies. So go ahead, Kev.
And who are the inexpensive goalies under $5 million out there that you think would be an upgrade over him?
Well, I think that's it. That's the issue. I think that the upgrade would be somebody who would cost just as much, like Leonard, like Bennington, if they decide. Ville Husso, I don't know if that's an upgrade because that's a big question mark. I mean,
would you rather have Husso than?
No, I would rather have Campbell, but I also think they cannot spend $5 million on Campbell, or like I would rather have Robin Leonard than Campbell.
Do you think Robin Leonard is available to the Maple Leafs?
I think that Vegas is going to trade him. Yeah, I think Vegas is going to probably go with. It sounds like they may go with Logan Thompson because they have so many cap restrictions, and he's making less than $1 million that they might go with Brassard and Logan Thompson and trade Leonard, because Leonard at the end of the year it didn't sound like that the organization and him were on the same page. Now I may be misreading that, and that may change, but right now it sounds like Leonard is somebody that they may trade to clear up some of their cap issues. And if it is, I mean, Gibson with Vanaheim, it's because they're in a rebuild. Leonard, it could be because they're just not on the same page. If they go free agency, it could be Fleury, but that's a 1-year fix. There are not a lot of options out there, but the option of spending $5 million long-term on Campbell when the organization probably doesn't think he's worth that much, the Leafs can't be held hostage to that. They have to get value for the goaltender they bring in, and they probably don't think that he's worth that much.
Well, let me ask you, do you just not want Campbell in any price, or would you be happy if he said, I'll come back for a 1-year deal at $3 million?
I would be happy if I were the Leafs. I would be happy on a 1-year deal or 2 or 3 year deals if it was 4.5. It's strictly the $5 million mark. They think he's worth it with the question marks that he has. He's 30 years old and he really still hasn't established himself firmly as a number one starter. Is he a tandem guy? Would he be a great backup? Sure, but I don't.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though. If you'd be willing to take him at, say, $4.2 million, right. $5 million, the difference in that is really a minimal player, an interchangeable guy that can go up and down. I mean, it doesn't seem the difference between $5 million and $4.2 million is not significant.
But you would think so. But for that team that is ferrying guys down to the American Hockey League every other day to get under the cap, it's a big deal. So,
do you have examples of a team that went with a minimum wage goaltender that won the Stanley Cup, as opposed to having a guy who was being paid? And do you know what the average salary of an NHL goalie is?
I'll figure that for you.
Yeah, I can get that. But do I know of a goal? Well, I believe Bennington was the last one because he was, he was on I don't think he was on his entry level, but I think he was on a second term contract. So he was making less than $1 million. Before that, no. But I mean, it's always the Quicks, the Crawfords. The Matt Murray was making significant money. I'm not advocating for them to go with Eric Shalgren or Joseph Wall as their number one goaltender. They're going to have to spend money on a goaltender, but if they're going to spend money on a goalie, it better be one. Like if they're going to spend $6 million on John Gibson, I'm confident that John Gibson is a top 5 goaltender in this league. I don't know at spending $5 million for Jack Campbell, whether Jack Campbell is a top 12 or 15 goalie in this league. That's the whole thing. They need a goalie who can make a difference at certain times. And Campbell is good, but he's not great. And they need great.
I think you need to look at his win and loss and his save percentage with the Leafs. I think you really need to look at that. It's
The average
well above
salary for
NHL
starting goalie
average.
in the average salary for starting goalie in the NHL right now is 4.3.
So
That's your average starting goalie. But then you've got some really low numbers in there. Of course, you got some really high numbers in there too, because you have some goalies on rookie contracts. So it may probably should take out the rookie contract ones.
Yeah, and his save percentage in his first year with 6 games was .915 with the Leafs. Last year in the 22 games it was .921. This year, as he played 49 games, the most in his career, it was .914. .914's average.
It's .916 for his time with the Leafs, and he's 75, 50 something, and 14. That is a tremendous winning percentage, Mike.
Yeah.
You go tell me any of those other guys playing in a high pressure market what their winning percentages are.
And save percentage for a goalie who plays on a team with the style that the Maple Leafs play is really hard to do. I mean, these are high quality. There's a lot of 2-on-1s. They give a lot of 3-on-1s, 2-on-1s, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of good points, Mike, with his competitiveness, because we talked about it a lot, how he wasn't the same goalie in the second half of the season, and he is unproven. But there are a lot of unproven goalies out there making $5 million. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to rule in Eklund's favor, and where it turned for me is your willingness to accept him at, for 4.2 or 4, but I'm willing at 5. I think $5 million is a reasonable amount of money. For a guy in his situation, and for him to ask that, I don't think is unrealistic given the fact that Merzlikins, who has asked for that, he's played for a top team and he's won for them. So
I'll just say this. I mean, I put up a decent argument, but my feeling is, and what I was told by somebody is that if he asks for $5 million, he will not get it from Toronto. He will get it from somebody else. He will not get it from Toronto. Now that might be Toronto angling for a hometown discount, and with them every dollar counts. But I also think there are enough question marks in his game. They can't be held hostage to that. There are other goaltenders out there that they can find who can play well in Toronto.
Well, I think if that was the argument, it might have gone a different way for you. But the argument was essentially, is he a $5 million goalie?
Yeah.
And, I think he is. And, I think that if Toronto wants him, they will have to sort of pay that amount of money. Unless he. So
I'll tell you where he won me over. Okay. Where he won me over. Go ahead.
Let's get in a word.
Rushy, please.
So the only thing I would say is, because I like that argument, I would like to know, the addendum for me would be, tell me the goalies in your price range that you feel like will outperform or do as well as Jack Campbell in Toronto.
Well, I said one. I think Leonard is a better goaltender than.
But he makes more money.
No, he makes the same. He makes 5.
Right, but I said the same 4.5. I didn't say 5.
Plus, what I'm saying, if the Leafs are forced to pay a goaltender $5 million, I would rather pay $5 million to Robin Leonard than $5 million to Jack.
Oh yeah, I think you're crazy then.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Robin Leonard. First of all, Robin Leonard is a fantastic guy, great person. Mental health issues are all aside, but is necessarily he the right fit for the Toronto market? That that another thing. I mean, a guy who's going to be on Twitter all the time. It's a really tough place for him to play. It's one thing to do that in Vegas, where there's 2 people covering you, but it's another thing to do that in Toronto. I think Robin Leonard has the ability to be a great goalie, but I think he's shown his statistics. I don't think are as consistent as Campbell's in a lot of places. I would have to do a real statistic analysis about that. But the game that won me over, and this is why I think Campbell should return, was Game 5 of the Toronto series. Game 5, Toronto-Tampa. In that game, if you remember correctly, Tampa jumps out to a really quick lead.
2-0.
2-0 lead. You're at this game, Mike. We're texting you. Mike's like, it's over. We're done. We're done.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of opportunities for Tampa to have stretched that lead. They had all kinds of chances in Toronto with a silent building. So much friggin' pressure on Campbell at that point because the team was sagging, but Campbell didn't. Campbell rose above it, and Campbell made some huge saves, enabling Toronto to eventually win that game 4-3. And there was no way, if you watched the first period of that game, that Toronto should have won that game. But they did. And they did because Campbell, in the most intense pressure he's going to face, because that if they lose that game, it's over, basically, right? Is it over completely in that situation? No, it's not, right?
No. 2-2. Yeah.
It's 2-2, right? But if you lose that game, the feeling was it would be over if you lose that game, right? That Tampa's going to go back and win Game 6 or Game 7 or what have you. He stood up and made some amazing saves under intense pressure, and enabled his team to win. That is something I've never seen really Robin Leonard do in the same kind of situation in the playoffs. I've never, and to me that is where I've always liked Campbell, but to me that's where I said this is the goalie for the Maple Leafs.
I mean, I can't point a specific game, but they got to the conference final with Robin Leonard. Robin Leonard has come up big in the playoffs for Vegas. I'm talking, and basically what my argument is, bang for the buck, is in terms of what you're getting for a $5 million goaltender. And I think that there's potential playoff success. And I'm not putting the failure of the somebody in the chat said, I'm not putting the failure of the Leafs in the playoffs all on the back of Jack Campbell, but at a certain point in those games, and this was what you're talking about, that was one moment where he did come up big. Well, he didn't come up big in Game 6 or Game 5 against Montreal the previous year. He didn't come up big in Game 6 or Game 7 against Tampa this year. I mean, he made some saves, but when they needed him to stop Nick Paul on two breaks, he didn't. I think I think
in all those games were close. They were all close.
I know, but the difference between winning and losing in those games is a save.
And he's definitely not Vasilevsky. He got outplayed. No two ways about it. But we're not saying he's Vasilevsky.
So if you're going to pay $6 million for a goaltender. Now, if I'm Calgary, I'm pissed off that I'm paying $6 million to a goalie in Jacob Markstrom, and he played like crap against Edmonton. If I'm Toronto and they trade for John Gibson, I'm going to expect a higher level of performance for a goaltender you're paying $6.5 million to. And if you don't get it, then they made a mistake. But I think he's capable of that, and I don't think Jack Campbell is worth $5 million a year, and they have to be concerned about that.
My final point, and then Kevin can summarize it. And I know I appreciate having already been ruled in my favor, so I can make this point without any fear. But my final point is this:
Peel.
They are at the point where, if you're like Kevin said, if you're going to try to save $500,000 in this situation, they are not a team that should be taking chances when they don't have to. If they have a goalie that can actually do it and they can go and try to fix other places, sure. But if to bring a goalie in who you don't know how Gibson or Leonard or
Binnington or
Hossa or any, Binnington is different. Binnington's won a Stanley Cup, but he's a $6 million goalie. But to me, you don't know how Hossa, these guys, you don't know how these guys are going to do. You do have an idea that Campbell can at least hang in there so your team can win it. That's my opinion. So Kevin, any thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say that, this really came down to what we were actually arguing. Like if the argument was, will Toronto get him re-signed? I'm not sure. I mean, all the reports have been that they haven't talked since the end of the season. That sounds like they want to go in a different direction. But I think ultimately they are going to have to pay, $5 million to get any level of goalie. Starting goalie in Toronto is going to get $5 million. Yeah. It just feels that way. And, all teams face the kind of issues that they're facing with their salary cap. I mean, theirs maybe are a little exaggerated because they've got some guys, at the above $10 million. But, it's every team has these kind of issues. And, you've got to sort of budget in order to, your starting goalie is going to, you don't want a team like the Maple Leafs and entrusting it to a guy making $3 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to pay a guy. Now, if they feel that Campbell's not the guy, maybe they don't. I mean, we don't know the answer to that. Maybe they've lost faith in him. Maybe they have a mistrust in his ability to get it done. Well, that's a different argument. The argument is whether or not he's worth $5 million. I think he probably is, based on the marketplace. I mean, we can argue about whether the market is set correctly for goalies, but when Bernier got $4 million to be a backup, how much were they paying Martin Jones? And so, and how much would they even give him Mrazek as a backup? Right. So, the market is what it is. And, I think he has every right to ask for $5 million if that's what he wants. Probably wants more.
Well, actually, Kevin, the argument was a little bit different than when you say that. I'm glad you said that, because the argument was, will they sign him for $5 million? So, which meant, because that implies
And I would say no, they're not.
He says no because he doesn't think they're worth it to sign him for $5 million.
And I don't think they can. And I don't think
they can afford it, right? Which is fine. I don't think that they. I think they can't afford not to sign him for $5 million. If we change that argument, Kevin, how do you rule?
Will they sign him for $5 million? The problem is I don't think this is about the money. I mean, it's a little bit about the money,
right?
I mean, the problem we've run into is do they want him at what price? Now, I think the prices we're arguing about, it's minuscule. The difference between $4 million and $5 million. If that's the argument, I'm not sure that's the argument. I think the argument is, do we want him? Period. I think if they loved him, they'd find a way.
Yeah, if you like him, $5 million is $5 million. You find a way for $5 million. I agree.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is, I thought, kind of the argument. So the argument, if you're saying, if we debate whether or not they like him, I think the indications is they love him.
They like him. They think he's a good teammate.
Yeah.
They think he's a difference maker that can win playoff games. They don't know.
Let's say if the statement is, do the Maple Leafs believe in Jack Campbell? I would rule with Mike because I think they don't believe in him. Right. I think they're on the fence on him. So if you're on the fence on him, you don't believe him.
I mean,
and if you're on the fence with somebody, you don't pay them $5 million.
But $5 million is really not that much for a goalie.
Now, I've heard a crazy rumor that I'll just put it out there, but I'm telling you, it's not authoritative. I don't believe it's going to happen, but the Leafs are probably going to either buy out Peter Mrazek or trade him, and a team that has a goaltender that's making significant money but has a lot of question marks because he has not been healthy the last couple of years is Matt Murray. Matt Murray won 2 Stanley Cups with the Penguins, just happened to play for Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe in Sault Ste. Marie, which is always an in for them.
Yeah.
And that a Mrazek deal, because they're paying Murray $7 million next year in salary and $8 million the following year. So it was a backloaded contract that a deal would basically be Mrazek and something for Matt Murray.
Cap hit is 6.2.
Yeah, his cap hit is 6.2. Now, there you say, okay, there's a goaltender that's won a Stanley Cup, but there are a lot of question marks about whether he can stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, he's one of the. I think he's a top 5 goalie in the league, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy the last 3 years.
I don't know whether it's health or not.
Yeah, he hasn't even really been doing
it. If their answer to this is to bring in Murray and trade Mrazek,
and I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I heard that. I was extremely skeptical of it.
I think that's a worse situation than they had this season.
So, right.
Yeah. No, I do. I think I agree with you. I mean, Matt Murray, if he's the Matt Murray, the one with the Pittsburgh Penguins, sure, but that seems such a long time ago. There's been all sorts of reasons it's not there. We know a lot of the reasons, some personal, some this, whatever. Yeah, again, this is a high pressure situation. This is not an easy place to be the number 1 goalie in. You have to be able to mentally be there for this. Marc-Andre Fleury could do it, no problem. He could step in and do it.
That's a 1 year fix.
I don't think that's a bad idea if they could do that. No. But at the same time, at some point, Marc-Andre Fleury is, did he lose a little bit of the glow this year?
But Kev, let me ask you this: if Marc-Andre Fleury goes to Toronto, he's going to make $5 million. It's not going to be a year or $2 million. He's going to expect to be paid.
I guess so. But I don't. But will he go there?
I don't know.
I mean, the problem you have with the Maple Leafs too, you got the bird in the hand, or 2 in the bush. We can talk about all the potential people, but I don't think they're going to trade Gibson. Number 1.
Yeah.
And it's just a guess on my part, but he's still young enough to be part of a rebuild. Like they already have some of their pieces in place. Zegras is already there. They've got Drysdale, who's already there. They've got some other players that are
Perry and McTavish, and
So like their rebuild in theory is not 4 and 5 years; it's 1 or 2 years. And
Right.
I mean, you can make an argument that Gibson's hasn't been quite as good the last couple of seasons. But that's a different argument. So I'm not sure they will trade him. And you don't know whether you can persuade Fleury to come to Toronto. That doesn't seem like his cup of tea. From the guy looking from the outside in. So I don't know. What are your options then?
Varlamov or Husso or Samsung.
I've been reading the New York Islanders media talking about Varlamov, and there's been a lot of discussion about the importance of having, two good goalies, and like they're not, the argument isn't that we're going to move him out. And he's got a kind of a punitive, modified no trade, which makes it difficult because apparently he's loaded it up with the teams that probably would want him. So So I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of goalie options out there. I mean, I've just had this discussion about who does Edmonton go after.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that.
Could be Jack Campbell.
So it could be.
And,
but then if he goes after Jack Campbell, where do the Maple Leafs go?
Right.
So I mean, you can say, well, it makes sense for them to trade Robin Leonard, but I think it's a fair question, the one that Eklund posed about, is he a good fit for the Toronto media?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that the way the Leafs are going to approach this is that Campbell, they know what they have in Campbell, they like him, but I don't think that they think he's a difference maker. And if they go to, I think it's July 13th, which is when free agency starts, if they don't have a goalie in place at that point, meaning that they've traded for somebody, that they'll explore whatever options are out there in free agency and then go back to Campbell and say, okay, we'll offer you this. But at that point, Campbell might be gone. They have a certain price point on him, and I don't think they want to exceed it.
There's one team that has two goalies that were in the top 8 for goals against average in the NHL. Two goalies, that were in the top 8, and that both that played over 25 games. And that team would be the Boston Bruins, right? So they have Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark. Both had really good seasons.
Yeah.
And one of those guys, could be could Edmonton or Toronto, go after. But is either of those better than Campbell? I don't think so.
No, and Boston is in a situation where they have a $5 million backup because Swayman was the starter in the playoffs. I think that was an insurance policy signing for Boston because they weren't sure what they had in Swayman and they didn't know what was going to be the case with Rask if he could come back and if he was able to be healthy. So Ullmark is an excellent goaltender. Again, I think he's got similar question marks to Campbell. He couldn't stay healthy in Buffalo. He played in front of a bad team in Buffalo. When he played with Boston, his stats were pretty decent. His record was pretty decent.
Yeah,
Swayman is their starter. He's probably going to be their starter going forward. So, would Boston want to trade him? Maybe, but he's got the same question marks. So you trade him to Edmonton. Is he going to be the difference maker? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't. And plus, is he any better than?
He's better than Mikko Koskinen.
Well, yeah, and he's probably better than Mike Smith over the long haul. But it's not you're still getting a guy that you don't know.
Right.
Can do it. So,
I mean, Campbell and Swayman, same save percentage exactly this year. Interesting. To me, we all think Swayman had a great year.
Swayman's a rookie.
He's a rookie, but Boston also plays better defensively than Toronto.
What was their save percentage this year?
914.
So above average. So.
Yeah, both of them, and so Campbell 914. Considering that he had a bad second half, like you said, the bad towards down the stretch
He had
there.
good 2 months.
He had a great 2 months.
Well, they had to be great, to make for the bad, or the inferior subpar, or whatever you want to call it.
2/3 of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was looking at save percentages, I was kind of shocked to see that Braden Holtby was 913 in Dallas. That was I was,
Yeah, I think Braden Holtby will resurface, but it'll be instead of exchanging contract information. It'll be medical reports.
Yeah.
Everybody will.
Yeah.
We got to see where you're at, because he's had trouble staying healthy.
Yes.
But I do think that the market that we will track, and the goaltending market will be fascinating over the next 1 to 2 months, will be the goalies with 1 year left that teams want to potentially move out, and that's like Cam Talbot with Minnesota. If Minnesota re-signs Fleury, a guy like maybe Edmonton wants to move out Mike Smith, although I doubt it. But they're Varlamov with the Islanders. I mean, if they want to spend $10.6 million on goaltending, okay, but I think you have to spend money.
They may not have a choice. It just depends on, I don't know
Right.
where he wants to go, but what if somebody told me that he thinks most of the places that need a goalie are on his no-fly list. So
yeah, I mean, there were several goalies that played this year in the NHL, and you're saying he's 29 years old, which Campbell is 29, right? How many goalies this year you think played in the NHL that are 30 or above this past year?
No idea.
Right. A dozen.
30.
Okay.
30 goalies played in the NHL that are 30 or above.
Yeah.
The goalie age 29 is not old. That's all I'm saying. It's not old at all.
I'm actually surprised at that. That's a lot of goalies.
It's the argument with Campbell is not age. It's the fact that he is not established, and they really don't know what he is.
Oh, shoot, Kev, I messed this up. 38 goalies over 30. Sorry. 38 goalies over 30 played this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, Thatcher Demko is making $5 million. I'd rather have Thatcher Demko over Jack Campbell, but
I think that's a comparison.
Yeah, but Thatcher Demko is at the beginning of his career, so
right, he's not available. So
right, and he's not. That's why he's making $5 million.
Right,
and they also lost Markstrom, so they had to make a statement with him. They had to go, okay, you're our guy. You are our guy. We're letting Markstrom go. So they made Demko. They went all in, went on Demko, which I think they should have, but they let Markstrom go. Anyway, it was a great show, Kevin. Thanks for your decision as always, and thanks to you guys for watching the show out there. Remember, we've got no hockey tonight, so find something else to do with your family. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you again